Welcome to the Evolvepreneur Podcast Channel. Today's my special guest is Davide Vigano, who's a co-founder and CEO of Sensora Health. Welcome today. Thanks for coming.
Well, thank you for having me, John. It's a pleasure to be here and talking to you today.
Cool. All right. So I just want to read your bio out, so I hope I don't stuff it up. You're a former Microsoft partner level executive with 25 years of sales, marketing, and extensive product management experience. As an intern, you started the international localization group for MacWorks and MacOffice in '87. More recently, served as general manager of the Health Solutions Group, where he's in charge of marketing and product strategy for both HealthVault and Amalga health product line. He acted as vice president of the Worldwide SMSP Medium Business division, which grew 18% year on year to over 14 billion. Wow, that's pretty good. He also managed the Italian marketing business and enterprise operations for 5 years and brought it to number one in the world for contribution margins. I'm not quite sure what that is. We'll find out. And sixth largest Microsoft subsidiary in the world by revenue. So that's pretty interesting sort of background. So tell me how you got to be, like you said, you're a Microsoft partner. So did you start that like when you were like 5 or something? Because you look pretty young.
Pretty much, yeah, close to that. So I actually started working for Microsoft as an intern.
Right.
Before graduating. And that's a pretty fascinating story. Would you like me to tell you?
Yeah, go for it, yeah.
So at that time, software was not protected by law outside the US, right? There was no copyright protection legislation in place pretty much in any country with the exception of the US. So most large software companies like Lotus, WordPerfect, Ashton Tate, people
remember all those.
Yeah, those people. Yeah, those companies were huge companies. They don't exist anymore, but they at that time they were the big dogs, right? So some people our age, your age, and my age probably remember Lotus 123, WordPerfect, right? DBase, right? Those products, they were pretty large software companies. They were focusing on the U.S. market. So Bill Gates came out with the idea of actually expanding the software market outside the US, which was non-existent in the mid 80s, which is what we were talking about. So it's like dinosaur age, right? So, so he was now willing to make the investment of hiring a bunch of people from international markets yet. So he reached out to the only organization, was a student organization that had an IBM mainframe algorithm that could actually rank people in multiple countries. And so he wanted to select some of the top people in 10 countries, right? Italy, France, Germany, Portugal, Spain, and so forth, to generate and translate not just the software, but also all the handbooks, the manuals, and currency symbols. All this stuff was hard coded at that time because if I come from Idaho, dollars is all I've seen so far. So why do I may not even think that people outside my country don't use the US dollars, right? So everything was hard coded. So it was not just translating, but it was really just internationalizing the software. So we were like 22, not 5, but the average age was 22. It was about 20 of us. I was clearly not in the top ranking, but the top 2 guys were not willing to accept a 1-year minimum internship, one-way ticket to Redmond.
Right.
I'm not joking. It's true. That was Microsoft at that time. No relocation package, no nothing, and a minimum of 12 months, right? So
was this a paid thing or an unpaid thing?
Yeah. You would just get basically a refund on the. It was less than $1,000, right? So I was a Macintosh person. My Mac SC30, it took me about 6 salaries to pay for that. It was $5,800.
Even now.
So I don't know if you could call that a salary, but anyway. But yeah, at that time, computers were expensive, and so we started the international product group, IPG, and 18 months later, we were 30% of the revenues of the company. Not because we were smart or anything. That the legislation, of course, changed, and Bill Gates once again had made the right bet, and none of the other companies that I mentioned had even thought about making that bet. So Microsoft turned out to be the only company that had international ready software in all these markets. So multiplane, which was substantially inferior to Lotus 123, became the standard in Europe because people could not. Yeah, I mean, you cannot run your accounting with US dollar currency in Europe, right? So, and at that time, Europe had 6 different currencies, not just the euro, right? So just it was a fun time for sure. We had a lot of fun.
So that was 87. Around 87.
That was 1987, correct?
Because I remember when I first started using Microsoft Word, I think it was just Microsoft Windows. They had our help bar, and when you went in there and had a bit about Microsoft, I think they took it away after a while. But it was actually a timeline of Microsoft, and it's interesting because it said it even had where they had 20 staff and then 200 staff, and I think it got up to about 10,000 staff or something on that help.
Right.
So that was probably stayed there for about 5-10. The growth was amazing. And you look at it and think, well, hang on, they did start small. Like everybody starts with 0.
Oh yeah.
And I think that's
people forget. Yeah, people forget how challenging. I mean, the technology in general and software in particular. You end up being in the red for a long time as an entrepreneur, right? You have to make. You make all the investments up front, and then yes, if you succeed, it's very scalable, right? But you have to make all the investments. Windows, Windows lost money for 8 years before becoming profitable. So.
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's uncertain times because people would say, look, no one's going to buy a computer. No one's going to, like it was all the same old story. No one's ever going to order a taxi on a mobile app, right? Or do your banking online, right? All those things they said no one's ever going to.
Exactly.
It's almost like it's a red rag to a bull, like they go and do it. So I think, and I mean, I'm in the same game at the moment. We're developing software, and it's like, it's a long haul, it's a long bet you got to make to be able to make sure that it's going to work out, but you don't know. And I think that the scalable thing is the tricky bit, right? So a lot of people make things but aren't scalable. And so I was kind of like, when I'm looking at going, can this be used by other people? Will other people buy this? Am I just doing it for me? And sometimes I do it for me because I know that my way is right.
That's right.
Someone will look at it and go, well, that's interesting. That's a good way to deal about it. But it doesn't mean it's going to sell. So, it's a risky thing to sort of do, but I think a lot of people in business forget about scalability because they think, and if it's just them and it only needs them every time, then that's dangerous. Ultimately, you can't scale it.
Yeah, that's the nature. You're right. That's the nature of the software business, right? So it's very scalable. It's also, if you think about it, there are very limited barriers to entry because it's very hard to protect it.
Yeah.
So at that time, Microsoft was not the leading company in any of these categories, right? In spreadsheets, Lotus was the leading company.
I used it a lot. I wrote an entire Lotus wet spreadsheet automated system, with macros and everything for when I worked in the bank.
That's
and they were so amazed at it. We cut their productivity time, I think, by about 50% of the work they had to do because they had to compilate all these numbers every week manually. So we wrote this automated spreadsheet.
And people forget, Excel was designed for Macintosh because Windows did not exist, right? So, and Excel didn't really make sense because of the graphical nature of some of the features on DOS. So it was actually Excel 1.0 was actually a Macintosh product. So we were actually laughing because we were just few of us, but all the Macintosh people, of course, were far more advanced in terms of the features that we could implement. Compared to DOS. So anyway, it was a fun time for sure.
And it's funny, like when you look back now, like the what used to be really hard, or all these changes and all this stuff that went along now. It's like cloud based has almost changed it to a point where it's commoditized software. Whereas before, you paid a lot of money for it, or unless you stole it, you paid a lot of money for it, right? And so and stealing was pretty easy because no licensing was there. So
the business model
was a real license, right?
Yeah, the business model at that time, was if you could not afford, a computer, and very few people, at that price level, very few people who actually were able to afford the computer, right? So I think the benefit and the value proposition of Microsoft has always been to democratize a little bit the computer business, right? You can buy right now you can buy a personal computer for probably half the price of a smartphone, right? So,
which is bizarre when you think about it, right?
Yeah, with $500 you can probably buy a pretty decent computer right now, right? So at that time it was $6,000, right? So if you adjust it for inflation, I would argue, that number is substantially lower, right? So we're talking about a decrease in price on computing that is substantial, which is different from the value proposition of course, Apple and other companies where the value that they want to retain is much higher because they protect the whole stack, right? So including the hardware.
Yeah, but I think the tricky bit with that too is like TVs have always been around the same price, right?
That's right.
So I think regardless of the technology, it's just like about you pay $700-800 for a TV. That's about the way it works. And I think that's the danger that Apple's got. It's like as soon as we start dropping prices, it's a never-ending drop down. Then they can't, And so surprised at how many when you can go and buy an $1,800 phone, right? And people don't blink. They think, yeah, okay, I'll pay. It's like, but you wouldn't pay $1,800 for a laptop or a computer. That's the bizarre thing, right?
Yeah, that's interesting. Of course, the value is both Apple and Microsoft in different stages, of course, were able to build a very substantial ecosystem, right? So I would argue that the value is more in, for both at the end of the day, in the ecosystem that they were able to build on their platform than anything else.
Yeah, the customer, right? The loyalty customer.
And the developers, the developers more than the customers building, additional value for pretty much, think about how many apps are on the App Store right now. There is an app for everything, right?
Yeah.
So
multiple apps for everything.
Yeah, multiple apps. That's right. Multiple apps for anything competing against each other, right? Yeah. So that's a beautiful story, right? Because for you, that actually allows you as the manufacturer to maintain high prices because that's someone else is building value on top of it too, right? So to justify that. So
it makes sense. So you went from software and stuff like that onto how you were there for 25 years doing that?
Yeah, pretty close to 24 years. Yeah, over 23 years. Yeah.
Sounds about the same timeline as me, roughly.
Yeah, exactly.
We all got caught up in this IT thing somewhere along the line.
Yeah, my wife says a life sentence.
Yeah, you always want to buy the latest stuff, right?
No, jokes aside, I had a blast. My last product at Microsoft was HealthVault,
right?
Which was a patient health record. HealthVault and Amalga. There were two engines. One was a consumer engine. The other one was an enterprise engine for healthcare. And I wish Microsoft kept those and retained those assets. They decided to sell Amalga to GE in, I believe, 2010. But they retained HealthVault. HealthVault, the IP of HealthVault is still at Microsoft. So you can imagine in a pandemic situation like this one, how an integrated system that goes from the hospital to the consumer could be extremely valuable. But it's not there, unfortunately it's not there anymore. Right?
And I think the dangerous privacy, right, it's quite funny. People like fighting at the moment for privacy over Facebook, but when it comes to healthcare and health records, right, it's kind of strange because, people without health, dynamic health records, it makes so much difference. And I think down the track with an AI kind of scenario, looking at that and going, well, we could pick something up on the way through to say, hang on, we've noticed something here that's not right. Whereas you won't going to necessarily notice because you don't have the access to the information. So I think it's kind of crazy that people are too scared to touch it, right? So in Australia, the same thing. Like they've got an online health thing now where you can actually upload all your results and stuff like that to the government essentially, who's paying for it anyway. Like the government subsidizes all this stuff. So they know what people do, right? It's not like they don't know. But the doctors won't do it. Because they want to keep those records and they want to charge for those records. So they basically want to keep those records, charge for them, and not give them to how you can access them. And to me, like, it's quite funny because like when I go see the doctor, I ask a copy of my results. And apparently very few people ask for that. Right? They just accept whatever the doctor says. And I say to them, well, what's this? I got no idea. I haven't seen my records. And why? It's your records. And then when I changed from one doctor to another, she said, oh, you're going to pay this money to get the records across. And I go, no, I don't, because I've got it all on file. So if you want them all, here you are, right?
Yeah, that was exactly what you just walked me through. Is exactly what HealthVault was designed to basically tell the doctor, push this button and populate my own health vault, my personal health vault with my own data, because as a patient, the data belongs to me, right? So think about, X-rays, CAT scan, images, right? Ultrasound, right? All that data belongs to us, not to the doctor, right? So, but
they seem to think it does belong to them.
It does to some extent. They're the trusted custodian, but the point is,
it's your data.
It's now siloed in multiple silos, and it's really hard to go and get the data when you really need it, right? So, so that was the challenge. And so we built this system before Azure was built. So we built a cloud system before Azure that would collect data from all the EHR systems. And also from about 450 medical devices, so like blood glucose monitors and blood pressure cuffs. And John, there was very little data coming through, either because, like you said, people were not asking for it, or because people are not willing or happy to use a medical device. Medical devices are perceived as a stigma. People don't want to be seen wearing one, right? It's an index of frailty, right? So that was
like
really
glasses, right? Wearing glasses.
Yeah, exactly. That, right? They don't make us look good, right? And therefore, we hide when we need to use them, right? So that was really the genesis of Sensoria. We thought, wouldn't it be nice to create a transparent computing paradigm where the device is embedded and invisible, and so garments and footwear are something that we all wake up in the morning. We probably did the same thing today, right? We took a shower, we put our clothes on, right? Wouldn't it be nice if our clothing was going to, in the future, it should be able to detect biometric data and physiological data, so that we can build predictive analytics solutions on top of that, potentially, or even interventional, not just diagnostic, but interventional solutions by using whatever we decide to wear that day: shoes, socks, T-shirts, and so forth. That was really the spark of
like an Apple Watch, which is going that way now. Like it's starting to do that.
No, I mean, as you can see, I use Apple Watch. The point is, Apple Watch is it's a great device, but it's limited to the human wrist. So you can build fantastic algorithms, but the fact that the watch is limited to the wrist limits the type of data that I can get. So if I'm a Parkinson's patient and I'm shuffling, very hard to get to see the quality of the gait, which is the science of human locomotion, from the wrist, from the human wrist, right? It's a lot easier to do that wearing a sock.
Show us your sock. Or show us your foot. Because obviously for audio we can't tell you, but in the video we can use sock here.
For people that are not just listening but are watching this podcast, this is a smart sock, and it comes with textile pressure sensors at the plantar area. So we have a metatarsal MTB1 and MTB5, one under the heel bone, the calcaneus bone, and then we have a full 9-axis IMU at the ankle bone level, which we call Sensoria Core. So we have accelerometer, gyroscope, and magnetometer in this little 1 square inch box, rechargeable, Bluetooth smart. And so we can collect data from the bottom of the foot, from the plantar area of the foot, but also movement in space. And then think about this as a gait lab extension, right? So I can see not only the number of steps, but I can see movement in space of that limb for a stroke patient. I can see shuffling. I can see foot landing technique. I can see data that the doctor has been trained to evaluate. Exactly.
So if you fell over, would it know that you fell over?
Yeah. We just built an algorithm, which is a fall detection algorithm. The cool thing, the most exciting thing for us is the predictive analytics opportunities. So we see a pattern before a person falls. Right. So in the future, we think that we're not going to be able to predict all falls, but if we can predict 5% of falls, that would be huge.
Because you see a lot of times, you're seeing that, particularly in like this movie stars, it seems, because they only really hear. So a movie star had a fall, and he was like 90 or something, doing really well, had a fall, and that was the end of it. Like that was where the whole thing went off the rails.
That's exactly right. I mean, the data is pretty shocking there. 1 out of 3 people age 65 and above fall each year, both in my country and your country, right? Both in the US and in Australia. 1 out of 3 people fall. if you then look at Parkinson's patients or Alzheimer people with the neurology related conditions, you can multiply that by 5, so that the chances of falling are 5 times their age group.
Wow. Yeah. That's a
So,
big percentage.
and I mean, and it's 2000, it's 2021. All we do, best case scenario for technology is when someone falls,
Yep.
we dispatch. We try to dispatch an ambulance to them, right? Which is okay, which is fantastic. But think about integrating Alexa, Siri, Google Voice with something that tells me when I'm older, well, Davide, whatever you're doing, stop and sit down now, or use your walker now, because we've seen this pattern before and you're about to fall.
Yeah, that's amazing. And I mean, also obviously preventative heart disease, like if you can detect you have a heart attack because of certain symptoms of that, like, because I've actually got a client that's in the cardiology game, and it's like you learn so much about heart disease and realize that no one really knows much about it at all, really. And that kind of prevention is amazing. So what other wearable devices have you got outside the sock now? Like, is there other things?
So we have multiple. We've built by now a family of wearable accessories, we call them. They can be garments, they can be apparel, they can be footwear, or they can be accessories that we use every day. So the most recent one that we just completed, and I'm super excited about, is a cushion, a smart cushion for wheelchair users.
Right.
So the Rancho National Rehabilitation Center in Los Angeles reached out to us, and we did not know about this problem, but they see a lot of spinal cord injury patients.
Right.
So the challenge with them is that a spinal cord injury patient, spends a lot of time sitting down because, of course, they're bound to a wheelchair.
Choice,
right?
really, right? When you got to that point, I mean.
That's right. So our body has not been designed to sit on a wheelchair all day for 40 years, right? Yes. So what we built is a wheelchair insert. Which is super soft with the same textile sensors that can be placed on the wheelchair. We use the same piece of electronics that I showed you that we use for the sock, but in this case, we actually provide the wheelchair user with a set of exercises that he or she needs to do to prevent the risk of ulceration. Because again, sitting down all day, the risk of ulceration is challenging. Like 60,000 people lose their life every year in the US due to ulceration. Wow. And so what we do is we actually insert this device here in a wheelchair cushion like this one.
Okay.
The electronics is completely invisible because it's actually in the pocket here. So the patient or the user can actually put his phone in the pocket here. And every X hours or minutes, we provide feedback on the type of offloading movements that the patient needs to perform to reduce the risk of ulceration. So basically increasing circulation and reducing the risk of ulceration.
Wow.
It's a Fitbit. It's like a Fitbit for wheelchair users.
Fitbit for your bum.
Exactly. So this is just yet one other product. Another product that we designed and built is for diabetic foot complications. So we have a boot that has been designed to monitor people with, in this case, diabetic foot ulcers.
Wow. Because you can't feel it, right? You can't feel what's going on.
Right. That's exactly right. People don't understand. What you just said is crucial. People that suffer from diabetes don't feel their feet normally because their nerves terminations have been damaged because of the poor circulation, right? So the nerves are the first thing that basically dies with lack of oxygen, right? So they don't feel their feet normally. They have these massive ulcers under their feet, but they don't have what Dr. David Armstrong at USC, professor of surgery at USC, he calls it the gift of pain, right? So if you don't feel pain, you think that's another product that we've been working on for a long time together with USC, University of Southern California, Keck School of Medicine. Okay. It's super exciing actually, because all of these scenarios, there is so much work that needs to be done. And
So this really, seems to me like if you could expand this out into the younger generation, that would be like, obviously your focus is on age and stuff like that from people that want this and don't want to wear that stuff, but the reality is obviously you move into a more generational thing where basically it's part of the clothing, then really it doesn't matter who wears it, and you've got a lifetime worth of data, right? You've got so much, like, so, well, 10 years ago you didn't walk this way or whatever, right? You build up that huge amount of data.
That's exactly right. You actually see the journey, right, and the patterns and the the data and the changes in the data can tell us a lot.
Yes.
So if you think about the music industry, I think the music industry is a great example. It used to be totally analog before Apple and Spotify came in, right? You and I did, we grew up with an analog only music business, right?
Yes.
And now it's ironically is 100% digital, right? So the clothing industry, the footwear industry, the apparel industry is still 100% analog.
Well, that's actually interesting because I bought a new car just recently, and it's also using the new digital radio stations. So I went into a car park yesterday, and as soon as when the car park cut off, and I go, why did that? Normally you just hear that horrible radio stuff going on because the concrete stuffing you up and you can't hear it. And I'm thinking, usually that's what happens, right? I get in there, I hear the radio, turn the radio down, but the thing just cut out. And I go to my son, who's like 21, so he knows this stuff, right? And I go, why did that do that? And he goes, it's because it's internet radio, basically. The internet got cut off. So rather than the radio being able to kind of continue on somehow, that's pretty basic technology, right? The internet technology can't cope, so it just cuts it off.
No. The digital world is black and white, right?
Yeah.
It's on or off.
Yeah.
Unlike the analog world where there is a degradation of performance, right? you may hear something, exactly, but it's not great quality anymore. In the digital world, you don't hear anything; it's gone, right? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But that transformation that the radio, the music business, TV, and everything else has gone through. The apparel and textile industry has not gone through that yet, right? So I think it's just fair to assume, it's just my assumption, of course, that at least a percentage of the textile, apparel, footwear business will transition very much like all the other industries have already into some type of digital world where there is some type of interaction and data collection type of opportunity that comes from those devices. And so, that's where Sensoria is really, think about a Sensoria inside, right? We would like to be the Intel inside of the digital transformation of the textile business. Wow.
That's a big one, strike. Mark that one. The thing is that I think part of the thing with clothing too, which I've never really got, but I guess I know why they do it, is that clothing wears out. But the reality is they can make clothes that don't really wear out. Like nowadays, like the clothing can be like they make bulletproof vests. I'm sure they can make clothes that don't wear out. And so I think it's almost like clothing could be like your Apple investment in some respects.
Yeah, that's why
high quality clothing.
That's why the challenge. You're absolutely right. The challenges are massive, right? In injecting sensing technology into textile. Washability, the abuse. I mean, think about how we abuse socks. We don't. Right?
And they get lost, right?
Exactly. So that's why we decoupled. We decided to decouple the electronics from the actual sock, but then the sensors are actually part of the sock itself, and they're washable. They're soft. They're not metallic. They're actually textile. They're 100%.
What you need to do is you need to find some technology you can find the lost sock, right?
Exactly. Yeah, it's like a mini
GPS.
Mini GPS tracking capability to find the right sock. No, I mean there is a lot that we can do, and the cost of goods sold will decrease with volume, right? Because again, the challenge there is manufacturability.
So what does a super sock sell for?
Well, right now our socks sell a pair of smart socks with textile sensors sell for $49.
Okay. Well, you can spend that amount of money on a decent pair of socks, can't you?
And then the electronics, when you buy the electronics only once. So and we bundle a pair of socks with the electronics. That is $199, and then every additional pair of socks is $49.
Okay, because obviously socks do wear out. Like it's not something. I
Yeah.
play a lot of squash and wear out a lot of socks.
That's right. So we built a full system for like distance running. So if you go to sensoriafitness.com, you will you can purchase. I mean, the mobile application, of course, is free. The dashboard is free. All the software is free. All you need to purchase is just the sock. So
well, that's crazy. And so where do you see it in 10 years' time? Like, do you see it as almost like getting smaller, I guess, and more less obvious?
I think, yeah, the electronics, from a technology standpoint, the electronics will disappear to the human eye into one. You're wearing a T-shirt with buttons. These buttons will probably be big enough to contain both the electronics and the battery. The battery is more challenging than the electronics because the battery has not gone through as many cycles of innovation as the electronics. So ironically, the battery is more of a challenge. But there is technology coming to market that will allow us to augment the battery charge. It will not allow us to recharge the battery completely, but it will extend the battery life. And then in the future, hopefully we'll have more. I mean, we need more innovation on batteries for sure. Right?
I think that's a Tesla thing, right? Because I know that that's his biggest complaint, right? I can't seem to get the best technology for batteries to be able to get these cars to last.
That's right. But the physics, the baseline physics of the battery is like optics, right? It's the same. You can change the material, but we need a transformational. I would argue we need a transformational change in batteries that goes to the core of why and how a battery works, and that is challenging, right? So what Tesla is doing is fantastic from a manufacturability, from multiple aspects. But what I'm trying to say is for us, we need tiny batteries that are washable, eco-friendly, replaceable, in million that could be embedded into millions of garments, right? Millions and millions of garments.
You crack that. You've got a really interesting deal going on there.
And so that will take probably another, I would say, 10 years to go there. But there is so much that we can do, even with the current technology. So I see people hiding behind the finger, say, well, we have to wait. I mean, there are so many scenarios that we talked about 3 of them. We could talk about 30 more, where the current technology, the current batteries, the current electronics are perfectly suitable to serve those scenarios.
And I mean, with wireless battery charging now, that they've cracked that makes a massive difference, because at the end of the day, you can always take something and put it close to the wireless charger, and you basically got that device charging.
Right. So think about, our smart. So we have a brace for knee brace. It's a smart knee brace that we validated with Cleveland Clinic for people after, they wear that after total knee replacement. It's a post-op, post-surgery rehabilitation, remote monitoring of rehabilitation, which is super important in a pandemic situation. You don't want to bring a person with multiple comorbidities in a clinic just for physical therapy, right? So we monitor range of motion of the knee, as an example, with that device. That device doesn't need to be charged for over a week, So as long as the patient charges it once a week, the physical therapist gets the data in real time, right? So
I guess in some respects, I don't know, I'm no engineer, but I'm thinking, like, if you're wearing clothes and you're moving, that should be able to actually, that friction should be enough to create electricity to be able to charge a battery.
Yeah, that is what I was referring to before. There are at least 3 ways to get, that's called energy harvesting.
Yeah.
So movement, light, difference in temperature. There are 3 ways that we know of, at least, and we're testing, that could help us augment and extend the battery duration and lifetime without having to plug in the device, right? Even combining these 3, depending on the scenario, we may not have enough energy to collect and communicate the data out. So because not only do we need to collect the data from the sensors multiple times a second, but also we need to fuel the Bluetooth communication device to actually drive the data out of that device, right? So it's the collection and communication that is expensive. It's expensive from an energy consumption standpoint. Correct.
Right. Yeah. Wow, so that's incredible. So I guess the interesting thing about that is, obviously, if it gets out to more mainstream and people figure that out, then it's an explosion, and you're kind of sitting there in that situation to be able to have that advance. Do you have anybody else that kind of does similar stuff to you? Is it something that you've come up with that's unique, or is it something that...
No, it's not. I mean, so what makes us fairly unique, John, I think, is the fact that we have a platform experience. So we packaged everything that we're learning, building those products. We're packaging and abstracting into a platform SDK, which we call it the Sensoria Developer Kit.
Yep.
Instead of software development kit, because there is software, there is hardware, and there is soft hardware textile in that kit.
Some device in between, right?
Right. And I can tell you, I mean, we are working with, we're honored to work with multiple, developers and academic institutions worldwide. Michael J. Fox Foundation, just in Australia, we're actually working on a grant on Parkinson's together with UNSW and Neura in Sydney, Australia.
Wow.
And I can tell you is fascinating, absolutely fascinating, to get the feedback from the clinicians and see the patients actually using some of our devices to improve their gait and reduce the risk of falls, right? So, and that's we're literally every week we have calls with you guys in Australia, and it's really, really great for our team to actually see all the great work that you guys are doing down there. So it's fascinating.
So that's an interesting kind of lesson for entrepreneurs in some respects, is that what you've done is you've kind of opened up your technology to actually be accessible, whereas a lot of entrepreneurs will think, oh, well, I've got to hide this away and not let anybody see it and stuff like that. But the reality is that by opening up that extension, which comes full circle with the whole Apple and Microsoft and all those kind of developer things, because at the end of the day, if you open up the smarter people than you, then at the end of the day, you're going to get some really interesting results, right? Yeah,
we're technology people. First of all, we're not clinicians, we're not researchers, right? We're technology people. So we need, we're trying to solve a multidisciplinary problem here, right? So we need help from other people to do that. And number two, we think that the market is going to be so large that even if we wanted to, we cannot address all these scenarios by ourselves.
Yes.
So why would we slow down everybody else when we know we're not going to get there? We're just not going to, not in our lifetime, right? So,
exactly.
So it's like,
why hide it? Why grab a hold of it? I mean, it's like Tesla. Right. I think my understanding with Tesla is they actually gave their licensing their technology for free to these other car manufacturers because they can't build enough cars. That's
exactly the same. I mean, the goal of Tesla is to fuel a transition, right? From traditional fuel to electricity, right? So if the market moves in that direction, they're going to do fine anyway, right? So if they become the only player in that market, they may not do as well, right? Because they need infrastructure changes. Yeah, absolutely. So that's, they need stations, right? Hydrogen, our kids will see the transition to hydrogen. I think that's the next generational shift. We may not see it, right? But they will, right? So every time you have a nascent market, unless the whole industry moves with it, or it just stays at the niche level, which is not our goal. Our goal is to make this available, right? I mean, to everybody.
Just go down the shops and buy it, basically. Just buy it off the shelf.
Yeah. That's why we build the SDK, and we basically give it away for the cost of the material to much any academic institution that wants to work with us. Right?
Because everybody walks differently, right? Apparently, like that's what they use UK camera. Like they've got all the cameras in UK, and they actually detect who's walking around by the way that they walk, because everyone apparently walks uniquely. So it's almost
exactly right.
Tech in itself.
Yeah, if you think about it, a person after a stroke, there is a part of the body that has been impacted. As an example, it has more rigidity in that part of the body, right? So the goal of a physical therapist at that point is to make that person go back to some type of balanced, symmetric, it's called gait symmetry, right, at that point. But how do you know if that person is actually moving back or moving backwards, right? So
they don't know, really. They go, it doesn't feel the same way as it used to feel or something. That's about it, right? It's about as close as you're going to get.
Yeah, it's still, in the analog world, you still have to basically call that patient into your clinic, do an assessment, and then you probably don't see that in Australia, where the country is so big, you probably don't see that person for another month or two. So what happens in that, it's like having a YouTube video of these 2 months instead of having a black and white picture every 2 months, right? It's a massive, massive difference from a research perspective.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Yeah. I mean, I reckon we could talk about this for hours, but anyway. So So do you sell outside of the US now, or can people buy from, like, let's say listeners are listening to, they can buy your technology from any
Yeah,
country?
people can purchase. I mean, we sell direct, and people purchase from Asia, from Australia, from Europe, from pretty much everywhere around the world.
Nice.
We just opened the subsidiary in Europe, so we will have physical presence there. We hope at some point to have one in Australia as well, but we don't have one yet. So
that's amazing.
That's part of the plan, though. So
great.
Hopefully
just a bit of shameless promotion for you here, because they're pretty cool stuff. I want to check out your website even more, because I was looking at it before, so it was interesting stuff. So now you've explained it, I actually get it. So sensoriahealth.com. So SENSORIA health.com. So just to make sure.
Yeah, thank you.
That.
Sensoriahealth.com is where you find all the healthcare related products.
Yeah.
And sensoriafitness.com is where you find all the fitness and sports related solutions.
Right, excellent. No worries. We'll put that in as well. Well, thank you so much for your time. It's quite interesting. It's very different kind of subject matter to what we normally talk about.
I'm sure.
But I think that the thing with people sitting down so much too, with like our entrepreneurs mostly are online, so they're probably sitting down way too much anyway. So maybe you need a little sensor that sort of gives them a little electric shock, says get off your bum and walk around somewhere, right?
We'll sell you the SDK so you can build that one.
Yeah, that's all. Punch, right? Get it. Yeah.
Well, thank you, John. It was great talking to you.
Thank you. Thanks so much, and we'll talk to you again soon.
When I was 17 and a senior in high school, I was a good football player with dreams of playing in the NFL. On an ordinary summer night in New York, I was struck with a stray bullet while walking outside of my home. I was not the intended target, but I immediately lost the use of my legs, and this event changed my life. It taught me that when life gives you lemons, it's up to you to figure out how you're gonna make lemonade. My doctor told me you may not be a pro football player, but you can always be the coach. From that moment on, I thought about becoming a leader. I thought that I'm gonna inspire people and motivate people to be the best version of themselves. I am now both a coach and a Team USA para powerlifter training for the 2021 Olympics. When Sensoria Health approached me with this cool and innovative product to help individuals with spinal cord injuries, I was thrilled to test this Sensoria mat out.
About 3 million people suffer from pressure sores. The healing process is hard and costly. Unfortunately, on average, about 60,000 patients lose their lives due to complications related to pressure ulcers each year in the US. The cost of treating pressure ulcer patients is estimated to be over $26 billion.
Hi, my name is Dr. Jeff Rankin. I am a researcher within the Rancho Research Institute at Rancho Los Amigos National Rehabilitation Center, where I study ways to improve the lives of individuals with spinal cord injury. The best way to prevent ulcers is to change position and perform a few simple pressure relief activities correctly every hour. Developed with feedback from our clinicians, the Sensoria mat is the right solution to help wheelchair users accomplish these much-needed activities. As part of my clinically focused research, I've used similar products under development in the past. However, for multiple reasons, these products have not met our needs or those of our patients. We reached out directly to Sensoria Health to collaborate on the design of the Sensoria mat. This system is a true wheelchair wellness coach. We have been thrilled with the consistency, quality, and accuracy of the system, and are excited to continue to collaborate with Sensoria Health on the refinement and development of this product.
You don't need to be able to lift 2 times your body weight to use a Sensoria mat, but however, you do need to lift a small portion of your body weight to prevent ulceration and to keep weight from that particular spot. Sensoria mat can help you a lot by monitoring your activities, counting repetitions within its full dashboard located within the app.